you in the Greek Economic Summit. My name is Joseph Arouch, and I'm Managing Director and Partner of BCG in Athens. Now, let us come to this discussion. We live in a rapidly changing environment where companies have to deal with a mixture of challenges. For instance, we have a change in the demand. We have many difficulties in the supply chain, and there are also inflation pressures. Having such a very difficult mixture of challenges at hand, it is important to take a step back today and see what is the impact of all those challenges. Therefore, without further ado, allow me to introduce you our discussants today, Madam Nana Goula, who is Product Supplier of Senior Director for Southeast Europe of Procter & Gamble, and Mr. Vassilis Stavrou, CEO of AB Vassilopoulos. Good morning. No, good afternoon, actually. So let us start with the first question. We have been witnessing unprecedented disruptions in the supply chain for 1 year. It is quite characteristic, the image that we have from the California coast, where 111 cargo ships were in a queue waiting to disembark of 500,000 containers, and that was repeated. It was not seen only once. So I would like to ask Madam Goula, how was Procter & Gamble affected by this crisis in international logistics, and what are the main measures taken in order to deal with this, not only during the pandemic, but also before the pandemic? Good afternoon. Let me introduce myself, first of all. My name is Nana Goula, and have been working Procter & Gamble for 22 years, always in the supply chain and logistics, both in Greece and Switzerland, where we have the headquarters. And the last 2 years, I had our supply chain for the countries of Southeastern Europe. So let me say that I'm extremely glad for this question, and I'm extremely glad to participate in this discussion, elaborating on the challenges as well as the opportunities arising due to this pandemic. So in order to address the specific question, what are the problems that we deal with and what do we do about it in AB Vassilopoulos? Let me first say that our company is a multinational, has a global presence, and therefore our consumers are 5 billion people all around the world that take care. So when the pandemic arrived, the field of hygiene and cleaning products was greatly affected. There was a soaring demand. And this led to our products being very much sought after, with a huge increase of sales. So we had to respond to all that. And this is what we have the last days. But this challenge hadn't been seen before. We know, however, that it is very important to respond to that, because we know that when there is a product lacking from the shelf, it shakes the trust of the consumer, not only towards this product, but vis-à-vis the whole economy. So it was imperative to see what we would do. The problems that we're faced with and still have in the supply chain focus on two directions. The first is in raw materials, that is, that the availability of raw materials, and the second is in the transportation. As far as raw material disponibility, I must say that a lot of suppliers give us the various important elements, raw materials in packaging, in what we put in our products. Many of our suppliers, therefore, had various issues and problems. They closed down, they merged, they disappeared, they had lack of personnel due to the pandemic, and all that. Some of them have had also financial problems of cash flow, that is, and that led to great production delays that are still experienced. And on the other hand, some were very robust, but the problem for them was the opposite, that is the abrupt increase of the demand. For instance, all our suppliers selling these chips that we call, when there's such a soaring demand in electronic devices, and we do have Brown, Oral-B, the electric toothbrushes, these suppliers cannot keep up with the deadlines to produce what is needed. So have a problem there as well. The problem of transport, so you hinted yourself. So we have the maritime transport. So there are hundreds of containers waiting, as well as in road transport we have issues. There's lack of truck drivers. This is a phenomenon that appeared before the pandemic, it is true, merely because many people do not opt this profession, so have a gradual loss of workers even before the pandemic. But also now we have problems because there are more strict custom and frontiers controls, so there's great delay there. Some truck drivers have to go pass through the test, have been vaccinated or not appropriately vaccinated. So all this problem combined, that is lack of raw materials and delay of transports, have led to an explosion as far as cost is concerned. So what do we do? I would say that we have a strategy which was very functional to date, and that was on three axes. The first axis of our strategy is on the protocols for the protection against the pandemic, which are very strict from day one, be it in storage warehouses, plants, or offices. We had some people to be in the office throughout the pandemic, so whoever would come should feel absolutely safe and come on high morale in order to respond. Therefore, we are extremely proud for having this strict protocol, safety protocols and hygiene protocols. There has been no dissemination of the virus in the plants. That was number one priority, very important and totally observed. Now, the second issue with regard to raw materials, we deal it with flexibility. We have a global flexibility, the part of raw material, of what we are to use. For instance, if a supplier had not the possibility to produce through our international network of suppliers, even himself, we could produce somewhere else, even another continent, the specific material that we needed, and thus create some kind of deposit so as to pursue our production lines. Same applies with our plants. If a plant, for instance, had to go over production, another would come along that produces the same codes and therefore assists the production of the first one. So it is important to have a flexibility in the production lines and the raw materials so as to continue the production unimpeded. And the third strategy, the third axis of our strategy, is what we call end-to-end synchronization. That is a synchronization of the whole production line from the beginning till the end. I'm very glad because this is precisely my field of expertise before I came to Greece. So we start from the consumer, going backwards to the line, to the retailer, ourselves, the wholesalers, our suppliers. We automate, we synchronize this chain, and we digitize it. And that led to attaining far better servicing at the lower possible cost. Excellent. And it's very important that you raise the issue of digitization and automation in the supply chain. It's something that we haven't used as much as we should before and during the crisis. And since you have already done so, and I'm certain that we will have some complementary comment from Alpha Vita, it would be nice to give us a couple of examples vis-à-vis this end-to-end synchronization. That is, what were the specific actions and how did they assist, and how some of them help in bringing closer both the retail market with the suppliers. So, could you please start, Madam Goula again, and then Mr. Stavrou will take on. Yes, you phrased it very well, because this is a cooperation with the retailers. Yes, indeed, this environment has greatly changed what we used to know recently and before the pandemic. For instance, you know that the consumer in the past, the model was very easy and predictable. A consumer would go to the supermarket to make the shopping. We now know that the consumer has more options on how we'll do the shopping, either with physical presence or online. Online via the retailer's platform or the supplier or the producer himself and other platforms. So the model is far more difficult to handle, and it's only through excellent cooperation and the cooperation of retailers we can deal with that. So let me give you some examples, as you asked. Starting from what we said, we want to have appearance on the shelf, be it the electronic or the physical shelf. This, in the past, was difficult to assess. We didn't know whether we were on the shelf. In order to know it, we had to have some salesman to go in each shop and make a stock of what stock taking of what happened. Now it becomes automatically through digital systems and algorithms that can see within brackets per code and per shop whether the shelf is on, whether the product is on the shelf, so we can act proactively. This is an excellent example of cooperation with the retailers, but also the prediction of the sales and the productions are on the basis of AI and machine learning. Let me give you an example again. In the past, in order for someone to program the production, that was something that one specific person would do, who would see whether there is demand or not, and whether he had the raw material so as to launch the production. That would take 9 minutes when we assess that. Now, with machine learning and AI, it's the system by itself that knows whether there are needs, identifies the needs for how many items, and if we have the raw materials for that. And that happens within some seconds. So we can respond far earlier to the needs of the consumers, the retailers, that is. I don't know whether you are covered by the examples. The whole chain now is far more automated through artificial intelligence and machine learning. So let us have you, Mr. Stavrou. Can we have an example? Because I'm certain that from the retail, there's much information on digitization of the logistics chain. Yes, let me thank you for the participation in this interesting discussion. I'll make a more general comment. There's no doubt that the last 24 months we live in a continuous crisis management situation. The first year, which was absolutely focused on handling the health crisis, where there was exemplary cooperation between retail, commerce, suppliers, and state, so as to have no problem with regard to the availability of the products. But that didn't suffice, because now we are on the day after of this pandemic and its impacts, and now we are in an era, a period where I have, for me, in my career of 25 years, I remember ever be in a time where we had to handle so many crises amassed at the same moment. Supply chain, transports, raw materials deficiency, energy crisis, and all that in an environment which is ever-changing. In the part of the logistics chain and availability of product, there's obviously a crisis. Let us not hide ourselves. There's great pressure that starts appearing, not that intensely now, but unfortunately it seems that there will be deficiencies in various categories. On the other hand, as it said, technology, which actually was greatly accelerated in this period, is not here solely to be used for alternative channels of communication or contact with the consumer, but actually has helped us in handling the things behind the curtains, as we said. One of these is handling the stocks. We now complete the last shops that come in the product, a program that's called the FFR, that is an algorithm that calculates on a daily basis what are the needs in stocks in each shop, so as for the orders to our central network to be as big as to be sufficient for covering this need. Therefore, we try to make the best possible management of stocks, and at the same time, we try to have a picture on the shelf such as to allow us to feel safe that we can respond to any need and any contingency that might arise. We must contribute, and we must all view this format of stocks management, because these crises demand cooperation, and we must see things from another viewpoint, so as not to have excessive stocks and not to have lacks where we shouldn't. So AI, machine learning, algorithms, this does the job, helps us a lot, and thus for us is called FNR, forecasting and replenishment. Thank you, Mr. Stavrou. And now it's a good point to shift the direction, because we said that there's a mixture of challenges, and we all focus on sustainability now. That is, we have our daily challenges, but we also have the biggest issue that we must all look ahead, see the climate change, and contribute to this additional effort. Sustainability is no longer a trend or en vogue as it used to be in the past. It's an urgent demand. One asset of that is disasters management. Having worked in so many countries, you in Alpha Vita have very low ratio of distractions and products waste, despite the fact that you have perishables, fresh products. Alpha Vita, therefore, will it undertake additional actions vis-à-vis further reducing food waste? What is your focus on that, and what are the next steps for implementing that? Thank you for the question, because indeed for us it is a goal for us. Actually, in 2019, we committed ourselves that we reduce by 50% food waste by 2025. This is an extremely ambitious goal, but actually this starts from the fact that for us, sustainability, it's not something en vogue, as you said, just a trend. It's a very conscientious choice. We believe that we should operate now, act now, because simply companies and organizations must be continuously in the foreground. So if we proceed today in actions that will be limiting the availability of natural resources, then they will have no future, no tomorrow. So this is the starting point, and for this reason we have adopted quite a number of the goals of sustainable development as declared by the UN, and we also set goals on ESG. So we see ESG, we see therefore our overall footprint on the environment, society, and governance. Food waste is something that actually we cannot accept, that something that is produced for human consumption will end at a landfill. This is something preposterous. It exceeds our values, and with this as criterion, we committed ourselves that by 2025 we want to reduce by 50% our impact in the areas where indeed we have full responsibility. In order to do that, we should see what was the point of reference, the starting point. Therefore, in cooperation with the University of Kharkopio, we ran an 18-month survey to identify what is produced and where. We have some impressive figures. More than 1 ton of food is wasted in Greece, of which 50% could be reused. We would say 93, 94 kilos of food per capita that we throw away. We can all operate to see how we can transform that. 50% of all this discarding of food takes place at households. Therefore, if we combine all the data, we see that we need a great effort by all the rings of the supply chain so as to contribute to reducing food waste. So what we actually do is that first we have drawn a picture of the reality. This 18-month survey has shown where is the production and where is discarded what. The continuation is to coordinate our actions internally in Alpha Vita with a reduction by 50%, as I said, but also at the same time, because this does not suffice, we have also created the first coalition in Greece for reducing food waste, a coalition combining more than 54 members, and amongst them we have supply companies and competitive companies, and this is extremely agreeable because we see now that this is a national issue, a joint effort for all of us, with a view to coordinate activities both at the level of production, our operation, but also and far most at the level of training the consumers on how we should handle all our refrigerator so as to reduce the discarding of food. In other words, and very simply, we cannot have something to be produced and end at a landfill. We have set our goal. We have our cooperation. We started with Kharkopio University. The next stage is cooperation with WWF, where on an international experience drawn on the best management of food discarding, we will be able to plan what is needed so as to draw the awareness of the consumer and coordinate our actions internally, and going to the supply chain, what are the areas that we should cooperate so as for the end of the day to contribute to reducing the food discarding. It is really a pity to have something produced for human consumption and end at a landfill. Thank you. That was excellent, seeing on such an issue, such a burning issue, that also competitors can cooperate and sit around the same table so as to solve such issues. Now, we've seen on many occasions Alpha Vita to be the foreground of dealing and of ESG. For instance, Alpha Vita started investing in electric vehicles fleet long before the government said that there will be no new internal combustion vehicles sold after 2030. When you are, as a BOD, making such an investment, because you have the biggest fleet of EV vehicles, how did you take such a decision when the cost benefit was not yet clear? Because yes, this helps in moving ahead with fighting climate change, but on the other hand entails huge costs for the companies and therefore for Alpha Vita. Well, I beg to differ with regard to the cost benefit. I believe cost benefit was always clear. It just depends on the time frame you set. The truth is, as I said, for us, sustainability is a choice, is indeed a choice. It is a choice because we really see that there's a huge interest both from our consumers, our clients, there's a huge interest from the investment community, and it is also a field that offers pride to our partners. So contributing to the society, to the planet, and in the field of ESG is indeed a choice. Now, the time frame within one assesses the cost-benefit analysis is the key to that. Such an investment, which may appear too costly currently, stricto sensu, if you like, under the traditional financial criteria. If one views it in a more long-term horizon, then indeed there is a payback. There's a great payback. If we speak on the field of environment, CO2 emissions, energy and energy consumption, let me give you an example. If someone had invested in renewable energy sources in the past, today with the energy crisis perhaps has a far lesser impact vis-à-vis someone else who hasn't invested anything there. Therefore, the horizon within which we assess the investment is the defining factor. For instance, when we had to make a decision to substitute all lamps in LED there, the impact was immediately tangible. But if one makes a decision to change all the fridges, all the refrigerators in the stores, then one must set a more long-term framework so as to make the cost-benefit analysis. So in this framework, actually, that is being indeed pioneers in this field and in our contribution to the planet, we had a cooperation with PPC with a view to offering a network of chargers that would make e-mobility easier. We have 400 chargers in our shops, aiming at reaching 800, and the ultimate goal to secure courses without having the anxiety, where am I to find a charger to use my e-vehicle? We are at the beginning, that's truth. There's not great penetration of e-mobility, but it is something that is built upon. So we actually want to be well prepared from now in this field as well, than wait and see for a later stage when many companies and people will be investing in this field. Thank you. And perhaps a comment, so as to close with you with this aspect, a comment from you, Madam Goula. How would you view this issue of sustainability? What is the viewpoint of cooperations and initiatives? Well, listen, in Procter & Gamble, these actions were launched a decade ago. It is again a choice, as we said. It's not something nice to have. It's a very conscientious choice. We have all these years, 10 years, we have invested heavily on reducing pollutants, but also we have committed ourselves to have neutral CO2 balance by 2030. These are costly choices indeed, but we believe that this is the only way if we want to show respect to our planet and have a future. That means that we must have cooperations because no one can have the solution by oneself alone, nor has the answer. It is a multifaceted and complex problem. So it's only through good cooperations that we may stage this fight. So have many cooperations in the supply aspect. For instance, big containers, big ship containers with suppliers who will use alternative fuel. Lorries and trucks that are bigger so as to have less CO2 emissions per course, per itinerary. Cooperations again with municipalities. For instance, the pocket parks that we have created 6 such parks in the city. That was the last fruit of the pandemic. One of them actually was in cooperation with Alpha Vita, in order to make our environment more viable, more sustainable. Another cooperation with WWF, a pilot project launched now that aims at making forests, the forest ecosystem, more resilient to wildfires. So all these cooperations are necessary. It is a choice, because a company creates value when also its surrounding has value. There's no point in having a company operating in vacuum. No company operates in vacuum. It cannot operate and be successful in a collapsing society. So we must have excellent cooperations. Thank you. We thank both speakers, Madam Goula and Mr. Stavrou. It's very important to see how you are in the front line in sustainability and give us the best example. You are role models. Let me say something at the end. For us, the pandemic, and this applies to all, yes, it caused many problems, but we must always vision the day after. So we must it may have taken us behind, but the day after must be far better than where we were before. For this reason, therefore, I would like to invite us all to think ahead, to think how this after will be better for us, our families, and the environment. Thank you.